Good morning and good coffee. I am a little more awake than I normally am today, so perhaps we can even have some mental coherency at the beginning here. I'm going to kind of ramble on for a few minutes while people are getting here and able to watch on the live broadcast, because I do like that. I like the interaction, and I like you being able to make comments to me. And even though I probably won't respond to them until after the video is done, occasionally I will, if I feel like I can get right back on it. But the reality is I'm not good enough at this yet to be able to pick right back up where I left off. So if you guys have a thought, write the comment right then, but realize that until the question and answer aspect of things towards the end of the video, I probably won't get to them. So again, good morning and good coffee to you guys. Today, we are going to talk about how, you've got all these chores to do, and you've got animals to take care of, and a garden to tend to, and oh yeah, there's this relationship thing. Somebody you dragged out here into the woods with you, regardless of whose idea it was. Chances are one of you dragged the other one out here. So how do you remain sane? How do you remain effective? And how do you remain married? Now, for this talk, I didn't prepare a bunch of stuff like I normally would. This is going to be more of a explanation of mistakes that I have made in the past, and some really simple things that I've kind of developed as rules for myself to be able to accomplish that tend to lead to improved situations. I'm going to roll down this window here because it's getting a little warm in here. So anyhow, I wanted to kind of start with the one saying that I did come up with that I wanted to say here. It's a quote from Jerry Seinfeld. Say what you want about him. He had some good quotes. He says, "Marriage is like being a stand-up comedian. It takes 10 years of experience just to call yourself a beginner." So that's where I'm at. I'm a beginner, and I have 10 years experience. I'm a novice in that way. And I've made some doozies as far as the mistakes that have come through our property here. But I wanted to start off with talking about the all of the different types of relationships that you have. You have friends, you have your children, you have your extended family, even like your mother, your father, your aunts and uncles. I mean, all of those sorts of relationships. All of them require some degree of maintenance, and in my experience, every single one of them has actually been in peril for me, where I just, sometimes I'll go 6 months, and not because I'm mad at her or anything, but I'll go 6 months without talking to my mom, simply because I didn't realize 6 months had gone by. So, that can be an issue. And out here, it's really easy to do that. You can very easily lose track of the things that are actually important because there's so many things going on. So let's talk about kids first. So your children, first of all, let me just say, are going to be okay. Oh, I'm getting messages saying that I'm not live right now. Oh gosh. Well, if there's anybody watching this, I'm going to just respond to that real quick. Sorry, just one second. You know what? I don't think I am live right now. I wonder what happened. Well, I'm gonna just take a second and make sure that that's the case, because I think there's a lot of things that everybody wants to hear about, and I might not actually be broadcasting right now. So I'm gonna delete this, and please join me when I get things reset up. You know, the technical difficulties, it's pretty funny. Every single video that I've done, I've had some kind of technical difficulty, and it just tells you that no matter how well you plan, no matter what you do. Oh wait, no, there he is. I am live. Hey, Gerald, thanks for pointing that out to me. Good, I don't have to restart the video here. So anyhow, so your children is kind of where I wanted to start out. Your children are more resilient than you could even imagine. What I've found to be the case about my children out here is, they're not as sensitive as you are. They're not as set in their ways as you are. And in many ways, they will be the thing that, or the subject, I don't want to say the thing, but they will be the subject that keeps you on target and in line, okay? The main thing that you need to take care of with your children when you're living out here is to remember to include them. Include them in your projects. I don't know if you guys, if you're my friend, you've seen some pictures recently of them being my little cob mixers, and they're out there with their bare feet and they're mixing up cob and mud, and they love it. That's like something that's super fun for them. Making mud pies with your feet, that's killer. But I've also had other experiences where I, tried to include them, and it just went so awry, mainly because I wasn't, I was including them, yes, but I wasn't, my expectations of what they were going to be capable of and what their contribution should have been was just way off, and this is an issue for me. This is one of my own personal issues in almost all areas of life. My expectations way outweigh what reality would predict the result is going to be. That's a problem for me, and it manifests for me as letdown, or just feeling like it's not, that's what it is, like letdown. And then that passes on to the people that you're working with. They know that you're disappointed in them. And it wasn't because of them, it was because of me and my expectations and what it was that I was, thinking that they ought to be able to contribute and being way off. So the only thing I can say on your kids is they're more resilient than you. They are generally happier and generally more happy-go-lucky than you. They are just so good. Children are so good. And when you deal with them, just realize that they have no experience. They have no skills. If you're going to do a project that has to be done right now and it's an emergency, find something else for them to do. Don't include them in those kind of projects, because you're going to be frustrated and you're going to be stressed out and you're going to be yelling at them and making them less willing to want to help. And this isn't just off grid. This is just in life. If you've got kids, this is these are actual axioms, things that you need to apply no matter what. Okay. So include them, but include them in projects that you can teach them. That you can actually take the time to show them how to do something and pass on a skill to them. They will remember it forever. It will be their favorite thing that they've ever done. And yeah, that's that. So, friends, So you got a bunch of friends, and chances are if you're moving off grid and you're coming from a metropolitan area, your friends aren't going to understand. And because they don't understand, their assumption is you're going to move off into the woods and you're never going to talk to them again. You're never going to interact with them again. Things are going to be, I don't know. Issues is like that. Now you guys' philosophies are so different that you're constantly going to have arguments and everything else. And I'll tell you, when you get out here, you're going to forget to contact your friends, and you're going to forget to maintain those relationships. But I'm also going to tell you that you really want to put some emphasis on doing that. I've enjoyed so much having a connection to the people that we left in the city. Certain people, not all people, but there were some good people that we met there, and even though we're very distant, we've become even closer because I'm not burdened by the stresses of your city life. I have other stresses that are totally different, and those harmonics don't seem to meet up between us and them, which allows us to stay on a nice positive plane. So having that connection to people that are outside of this lifestyle is still really important and needs to be maintained. You need to go through your Facebook page and say, oh, I haven't talked to you in a while. Send out a message. Hey, hi, how you doing? Things are going great out here. I just wanted to give you an update. Or, how are things going with you? Last time we talked, blah, 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 blah was happening. So that's another point that I want to drive home is just because you're moving off grid doesn't mean you have to disconnect from life, from livingness, or from the pursuit of having a diverse group of friends. Okay. When you move off grid, you're going to find that it's a social desert. Your social interaction isn't going to happen out here. And if you don't have social interaction as a social being, you'll probably go nuts. And I use nuts in the most insensitive way possible. I mean, you'll be like running around going, "Ah!" Actually, I'll tell you, this was the mistake that I made on this subject. I disconnected from people, but I was still watching. I was seeing, this was maybe, 3 months into our move out here. I was seeing all these cool things that people were doing back in the city, and I had reached a phase that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. And that phase, was like I was almost jealously looking like, oh, they just went to the water park, or they just went to the, to Disneyland, or they just went blah, all of the different kind of snarky things that you can go through. And I remember the day specifically was the day, I think it was 3 years ago, and it was, 5 years ago. Time's going by fast. So 5 years ago, it was the day that we had the supermoon that was also a lunar eclipse. And it was gorgeous, right? And we had, set up, we were going to have a little party with some people that we met and a barbecue, and we were making this whole thing. Well, one of my kids had taken my tablet, which at the time was the only connection that we had to the outside world. We had our little hotspot, and we had our tablet, and it was out there. So they took my tablet and they put it on a chair, one of those folding chairs. And it got dark. Only thing that there was the fire going. And I went to sit down. I sat down on the tablet and heard snap, snap, crack, 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 snap. And I was like, oh my gosh. I stood up and I looked, and it was bent in half. I mean, it was no longer going to be anything useful other than, a Frisbee. And this was a trigger for me, because I was no longer going to be able to have that, or not no longer, but I was going to have to solve all of these things. We didn't have any money at the time. We didn't have income. We didn't have nothing. And it was something I was going to have to solve. It triggered the most ridiculous tantrum fit that a grown man has ever thrown in his entire life. I was literally running around going like this. I was going nuts, you know, like, I don't know. There's all the frustration of the 5 phases of off-grid relationships that I'm going to go over in a few minutes, all at once. I hit every single one of them, and it was really, really embarrassing, actually. Like, that was the thing. I couldn't believe that I'd let my kids and my wife see me act that way. And, you know, I've wondered since, every tantrum that the kids throw that's just completely over the top, if it had something to do with me breaking that tablet that day. So the point I'm trying to make is that's how important staying connected to the things that you liked about your old life when you come out here. So that's, you know, a little bit about kids and a little bit about friends. And we're going to hit, on those subjects, while we're talking about this next one, which is, like I said, the 5 phases of, off-grid relationships. Now, mind you, I'm not a, you know, psychologist or a, you know, relationship specialist or anything like that. What I am is a guy, you know, who has struggled with relationships in general for his whole life. That's with friendships, that's with, you know, my family, that's with everybody. I'm a very certain person, so I know, you know, I know that what I'm saying is correct, or, you know, at least I think I do. And I can come off of that viewpoint, but I think sometimes what I require of another person's argument to change my mind is a little unreasonable. So I've always had a really hard time with that. And, but one thing I have had a very easy time with, and a thing that I think most people maybe have trouble with, is observing and recording the results of decisions. Okay. I don't know what it is. I can look back to an exact decision which led to this being a situation today, whatever it might be. And I've kind of codified those things, and want to pass them on to you. You know, if you find it useful, awesome. If you don't, and you disagree with me, but you also are prepared to defend your side of the argument, please, you know, post about it. You know, even if it's after the video, post in the comments and let me know what you think and what your disagreement is, and let's hash it out. Those are the most fun conversations, and I love it when people agree with me. It makes me feel sane, but I really thrive when people disagree, because we can sit down and we can hash out those disagreements and maybe even come to a better solution. So I'm open to that if you're open to it, and yeah. So anyhow, these are what I'm calling the 5 phases of off-grid relationships. Now, this is the beginning of going off-grid. To tell you the truth, if you haven't gone through these and you do live off-grid, you just haven't, the circumstances haven't, like, come around yet. I've done a bunch of surveys. I've done a bunch of, you know, asking people, interviews, all kinds of stuff, to find out from people what different things that they've gone through. And then I compared that to my experience and my wife's experience and with my family and everything. So that's how I've come to these conclusions. Now, I'm going to kind of present it in a way that tells you the mistakes that I've made, and that, you know, realize that I know they're mistakes. I consider them mistakes. These are things that I've done that, you know, were stupid at the time. They didn't require any thought to do. I just acted. And in a lot of cases, that's the right thing to do, but not when dealing with your most important relationships in your life. Okay? And also, I'm not sure about the video feed right now. If there are some people watching, will you press one of the reactions so I can see if anybody's watching or if anybody is listening? And if you can, that'd be great. But I'm gonna go on with my 5 phases of off-grid relationships. So number 1, and this is always the case. Gerald's here, yay! So I am broadcasting. That's really good. It's weird. The format that I'm used to seeing on my phone is it's totally different today than it was last week. So, yeah. So the first phase of off-grid relationships, I'm calling gleeful euphoria. Okay, gleeful euphoria. Now let's think about Glee, for example. Okay, you've been made to believe by various shows that Glee is happy singing and, having a great time. No. Glee is an inability to confront reality. Okay, Glee is a disconnect. It's a put a smile on because that's the best thing I can do right now. Because the second you show up on your property, if it's anything like mine, where you show up and there's literally nothing there, realize that that is a situation to confront. You have a tremendous amount of work ahead of you, more than you could even imagine. I have to tell you the truth, more than you could ever even imagine. But like with many things that are difficult, we have a hard time confronting the actual difficulty, the actual things that people are gonna run into. We have an even more difficult time judging the amount of force you're gonna have to apply to overcome those barriers and those obstacles. So, gleeful euphoria is showing up at your property, and for the first 2 or 3 weeks, going, oh my God, I'm home and this is so beautiful and I love the trees and, I just want to sit by the fire, and all of those things are great. But realize that you are mentally compensating for the overwhelming amount of functions that you're going to have to do to make your life comfortable in that situation. Your mind is literally incapable of confronting that at that current time. So you go into this euphoria state where everything is amazing and everything's wonderful and life is just going to be fantastic from this point on because I've finally made it to off-grid living. I'm sorry to tell you, that's going to come to an end real quick. And that leads into the second phase of the off-grid relationship. And that is manic activity, okay? This is activity like above and beyond any amount of activity that you've ever done in your entire life. Let's say you come from the city, you had a 9-to-5 job, or even, a 9-to-7 job. You're working 10 to 12 hours a day. You're going to go through a period of time where your mind is starting to adjust, to the things that you need to do. You're going to start getting your wits around all of the individual functions that you need to do. You're going to plan it all out. You're going to write vision boards, and you're going to make lists of things you have to do and how you're going to go about them. You're going to watch tons of YouTube videos. You're going to get out there and you're going to be chopping trees and, trimming trees and clearing brush and digging holes and moving stuff. And you're just going to be working and like an incredible amount. We're talking 15, 16, 18 hours a day. And you will do this. This is your body overcoming your mind's gleeful euphoria, okay? Because instinctually, we know we need to solve problems. We got to figure out, where are we going to get water? What are we going to do about food? How are we going to, where are we going to go to the bathroom? How are we going to shelter ourselves? Was buying that mobile home or that motor home or trailer a bad idea? There's all of these doubts and reservations are going to go through. And that is the in-between phase between that manic activity and the gleeful euphoria. Your body is going to try and overcome your mind's inability to confront the projects that are ahead of you. Okay, so in doing that, you are going to forget about things. You're going to forget about the things that are actually important. You're going to forget about, including your children. You're going to forget about maintaining your relationship with your significant other. You're going to forget all of those things, because if your mind is already overwhelmed and trying to get out of that gleeful euphoria and into activity and into action, most people, at least this is true for me, don't have the ability to then also add on to that something as complex as the problems that you have to solve that have to do with the relationships that are the most important to you. So you're going to justify it by saying, I'm just busy, I got to do stuff, I got to get going, I got to make this happen, and this is the most important thing. When you start feeling that exact thing, when you start saying to yourself, this is the most important thing, and this is the thing that I need to do, know that what you need to do is stop. Okay? You need to stop. You need to just take a step back and go, that is an important function. That is something that I need to solve. Okay? But the reason I need to solve that is this. Okay? Because for me, I can go pee on a tree. I can live in a tent. I could eat forageables and hunt rabbits and, whatever else that I want to do, or, but the reason that I need to solve all of those things, the reason that it's important for me to do that, it's not for me. It's for the relationship that I'm in. You know what I mean? I want to solve those problems so that my wife is comfortable. I want to solve those problems so that my kids can take a bath. You know what I mean? You have to focus on what the motivation is, and then realize that motivation doesn't necessarily, feel the same way as you about what's important, and you need to stop, come off of the viewpoint that this is what I got to get done now, for a second, until you've actually decided together, because at some point that's going to be really handy for you. But you really need to just, talk it over with your wife, talk it over with your husband, and say, do you agree with that being the next thing that has to happen? Now, reason for this, a lot of you guys have seen my shop, and it wasn't always a shop. When we first moved out here, we had a little 20-foot trailer. It was great, it was comfortable. Before we came out here, I remodeled it so it had wood floors and carpet, and it was really nice. Like, everything was really, really nice. And it also got destroyed within the first 2 months, because trailers and motorhomes, campers, that kind of stuff, they weren't designed for you to live in constantly, okay? They were designed for you to go off for 2 weeks or a week or whatever and come back and park it, So, so I thought to myself, what we need is a room that's built off of the side there. My friend has this thing about porches, right? He goes, what most people do is they go out to their place, and the first thing they build off of their trailer is a porch. Second thing they build is an enclosure for that porch, which leads them to building another porch. And then that porch needs to be enclosed. All of a sudden, they've got this circuitous mansion that they've built all the way around a trailer, and that kind of, isn't really the best way to design something. It's also it's very difficult. You're building 4 interior and exterior walls on everything that you build. It's 3 times as expensive to have the same amount of floor space. So, anyhow, so here I am. I've built this porch, and now I've built this enclosure. I did exactly what my friend said. he thought was funny, you know, after the fact. And I mean, I spent 20 hours a day working on this thing. I was just, you know, sweating. I looked like I was, I don't know if you've ever seen anybody that's just completely desperate and totally like, just like trying to get through something so bad. And all they could do is think about finishing, and, you know, so that they work on something for, you know, way too long. Well, at the end of that, they start making mistakes and cutting corners and everything else. It's just not a good way to go. Now, here's the thing about that. After the room was completely, yeah, gosh, I keep getting messages from people saying that they can't see me. I am here. I'm going to just keep going. I'm too far into the video now. Hopefully people will see it after. That's too bad. So anyhow, I'm standing there and I'm looking at this building that I've created, and this is my shop, or the thing that I use as my shop now. I'm looking at this building and I'm like, wow, you know, I built that out of pallets and garbage and, you know, stuff that people were throwing away. We called it the indoor-outdoor room because I hadn't salvaged any doors for it yet. Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad that the quality is really good, Gerald. So I'm just sitting there with just this enormous pride. I'm like, yay, this is so great. I did this and I built this beautiful thing for my house. It had a wood stove in it and everything else. And my wife came out and joined me, and she's like, you know, it's a really nice building. You know, that's really great, you know. And I had to pull out of her because it didn't seem like she had the enthusiasm that I would think would come along with that. And I had to pull the answer, you know, pull the string. And she goes, it's really great, you know. I just want to know, like, are you going to be working on the bathroom at all, you know, because it'd be nice to have some place to do that, you know. And it hit me right then that I never even asked her if this was something she wanted me to do. I never even thought to myself, maybe Carrie would have some input into what I should do next. I just needed to get into action. I needed to do something to justify my breath that I was taking at that particular moment. Now, I got offended at the time. And getting offended at the time led to the next phase, which I'll get to in just a second. But I got offended. I was like, I've worked my ass off for this. I have been so on point, and I have made everything go right, even though we didn't have any money and we didn't have any blah, 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 blah. And I was just start like talking myself up. Here's another clue, okay? When you're in an argument with someone, especially out here, and you start, you know, like coming up with reasons why you're right, you're starting to justify what you did, realize that justification is basically an admission of guilt, okay? And when you start justifying things, all you're really doing is saying, yeah, I did that, and this is why. And then you're going to start enforcing that you're right. And this is true for me, may not be true for you. You might be on the other side of this particular argument. If you are, you know, realize that this is what's going on in that other person. Generally, people that are soft-spoken and, you know, in my experience, tend to receive most of the upset and, you know, create it in other ways other than the, like, really, you know, boisterous upset and screaming and yelling and blah, 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 blah. So know that when you start to say to yourself, like, I did this, and I did this, and I made this happen, and I blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, you did that. But the reality is, it might not have even been, something that was necessary for anybody to do. You may have just wasted your time completely. And it took me years, literally years, okay? And which is why I'm telling you this. I don't want it to take you years for this to handle. And Heidi, hey, good morning. I don't know why. There's been a bunch of stuff that's been weird about this video, so but it's still playing, so I don't have to split it up into two, so I'm just going to go with it. Okay, so we've covered gleeful euphoria, step 1. We have covered manic activity, that's step 2, or phase 2. Phase 3 is kind of a contentious one because I think people are going to read into what I'm saying a little bit more. So before you do that, let me get through my explanation, okay? We are calling this phase, my wife and I, we call it the yelling at each other phase, okay? That's in quotation marks because the yelling part is supposed to be ironic or funny. It doesn't necessarily manifest as yelling at each other. But then again, sometimes, and probably more often than you'd think, it does. The yelling at each other phase could manifest as antagonism, sarcasm, make wrong, veiled insults, essentially it's an unease with the other person that you're with. Okay, this is a really interesting phase, and the reason we call it the yelling at each other phase is because when we came out here, there was nobody around us for miles, and we've had hundreds of people move into the area around us because it is the perfect location for them to come and grow a bunch of pot. That's not my thing. The growing aspect of it is just not my thing. I'm not gonna, get upset about it or anything else like that because it's their property, and I believe people should be able to do what they want to do on their property, as long as it's not hurting anybody else. So that being said, that happened. And between 6 weeks to 3 months into hearing, first we would hear the sounds of moving in, the trucks backing up, the trees getting trimmed, the fences being built, all of those things you'll start to hear off in the distance. And then the 6 week to 3 month mark will hit, and inevitably you will hear you will literally hear yelling at each other. Oh, they're my dogs. See, they always bark when they hear the yelling at each other. And it manifests differently for different people, but realize that you have to go through and actually, it's a phase that you got to get through. That stuff has been pent up forever, as long as you've been in a relationship. You see, we have people that we can go and talk to when we live, around a lot of other people. You walk outside. I used to live in a condo complex. You walk outside, every single time you walk outside, you're having a conversation with somebody. It's usually just a, hey, hi, hello, or whatever, but you're outflowing. Your words are going out. They're not just bouncing around in your head. Well, when you get to a place out here in the middle of nowhere, and the only person you've talked to in the last 2 weeks or a month or whatever is your wife or your husband, you're going to find out that you got a lot to say that you just kept to yourself before, and that's okay. Know that has to get out. You have to do that. That needs to vacate. Mitigate the destruction, know that you're about to go off the deep end. And if you're the other person that's going to receive this, know that person is struggling with something. They're struggling with a lot of, a lot of changes in their life, their social activity, their outflow, many of the things that keep us what, the people in modern society call civilized. Okay. Know it's going to happen. Know that you have to make it through it, and know that if you do, some better things are on the way. And this actually leads me to a point I was thinking about the other day. Somebody asked me, under what circumstances should I not move off grid? One of those circumstances, I mean, there's health issues and things that would need to be solved, problems that need to go, that need to be solved. But as far as relationships go, the circumstance that you should not move off grid with, in my opinion, is if you are in a new relationship. Okay? If you're in the honeymoon phase, I guarantee you will not make it through phase 3 of this. Okay? You'll think you will. You'll think that in your relationship you are just you're just set. You're all perfect and everything is good and whatnot. If you're in the honeymoon phase of your relationship and you decide to move off grid, I'm just going to make this a certain statement. Within 6 months, you will no longer be in a relationship. Okay? You need to know all of those things that happen when you live with a person. I saw a meme the other day that said if you're in a new don't get married until you have sat your significant other at a computer with slow internet connection. Then you're going to find out who they really are. Well, do that back in the city. You know what I mean? Don't do that out here. Don't find out who your significant other actually is out in the middle of the woods where you can't get away from each other. I mean, you can, but, figuratively speaking. Because you will not make it through the yelling at each other phase. You guys are going to find out things about each other. You're going to realize that certain rose-colored glasses issues that you had with that person are going to turn to poop-colored glasses. And it's going to be really difficult to overcome your propensity to say, God, I've made a mistake. This is not what I wanted. This is not, when really... maybe it is exactly what you wanted. Maybe it is that thing that you were looking for, and it's the not being prepared in your relationship that is turning that dream into a nightmare. Okay, so I don't know. I thought I should throw that in there at that point, but yeah. So if you're in the honeymoon phase, get through that back where you're from. Beforehand. Don't get through the honeymoon phase out here because you won't make it. Yeah. So now, even if you guys have been married for years or been in a relationship for years, you've lived together, you know what you consider to be everything about that person, go into it with a clear head and know that that's just not the truth. Because it's not. You're going to find out things about the person that you're with that you never knew, that you never thought were possible. You're going to realize things both on the good and the bad side of that person's personality. Some of the things that my wife realized about me, because I would never say the things that I realized about my wife, except for the positive ones, which I will hit. Some of the negative things about me is I'm very difficult to be the only person that you talk to in a period of time. I'm opinionated. Things are one way or the other with me. I decide sometimes haphazardly and sometimes ridiculously. But I decide. I don't ever maybe. I'm like, we're doing this, even though it might not be the right thing. When it comes down to it, if I don't get my way, I'm stubborn, and I will pick fights as a result of it. These are character flaws that I've recognized. I'm not going to say flaws because there are other ways that they've been very beneficial to me. But those are things about me that she had some inkling of, but now knows with certainty, that I'm that guy. I'm I'm not necessarily an easy person to get along with. Okay. Things I recognized about her, I used to think that I had to coddle her and, protect her from everything and create a buffer between her and the rest of the world. And not like in a weird, controlling, obsessive way, but like a real, protective, like I don't want you to ever feel pain or anything else like that. I used to think that. Coming out here, I've realized that she is 100 times stronger than me. And if anybody should be buffered from the world, or vice versa, I'd have to say, she does a much better job of doing that for me. She, keeps me from making an ass of myself too much. So anyway, so that's phase 3, the yelling at each other phase. And again, it can be manifest as sarcasm. It could be manifest as, irritation, antagonism, any of those sorts of things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be screaming at the top of your lungs, but don't be surprised if that's exactly what happens. So this leads you to realization, okay? At this point, you've made it through what I consider to be the hardest part about off-grid relationships. You've made it through the yelling at each other phase. You've been able to mitigate the mean things that you were going to say that were just going to come out. You managed to work out the issues that were causing that frustration to begin with. And now you're starting to look at confronting reality and also the realization that that neither one of you is perfect. And neither one of you is, you knew the person. Let's say you knew the person, but now neither one of you has an area of you that the other doesn't know. Okay. And that I have to think with as the end result of the yelling at each other phase. Those things which you still kept close to your, I saw or heard, somewhere that you're not in a real relationship until you can poop in the same room. We did that many years ago. And I'd have to say, my addendum to that is, you're not in a fully real relationship. You don't fully know the person that you're with until they're the only person you can talk to for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So you realize the person's faults and you accept them. You look at, like, it's a fault, but a big deal. I've got my own, because I also confronted the reality of myself, not just the other person that I'm with. Because I also want to point out that all of these things that I'm talking about are things that you can do or that you are going to experience. But realize that it's the other person who is going to receive the way you react in all of these things. So you're confronting reality. You're looking at the realizations. Or I'm sorry, you're confronting reality and you're having realizations. And I think there's a saying that kind of wraps up what the basic concept is. And I was thinking about this the other day, and this is kind of what I came up with. That you expected anything other than the unexpected is why you were struggling so much. I don't think that there is a statement that kind of sums up why people get so depressed in life and why people get so upset with their current situation. And there was another saying that was, everything is as it should be. Now, that one, I don't know, I could take or leave because I feel like most situations can be overcome. But that you expected anything other than the unexpected is the reason that you're struggling so much with one thing or the other. This is true in all areas of life. You think it's going to be one way, so you plan and you plan and you plan. You spend you plan out the entire month, and you're like, this is all going to go exactly how it is. And the first time that you go to accomplish one of those steps, boom, your plan just gets thrown out the window. Well, that's, what did you expect? When you're planning, you're essentially trying to predict the future. I don't know about you, but I don't have a flux capacitor. I don't have the ability to make it to 88.8 miles an hour in whatever short period of time there is that's necessary to do that with the flux capacitor and the Mr. Fusion, and be able to go to the future and see what it's going to be like. So trying to plan that out is your exercise in futility for the day. Plan for the day, plan maybe for what you're going to do tomorrow. Write a list of things you need to get when you're in town. But I'm getting off subject here. Those are all like very important things, but the realization that there are so many things that you don't have control over, including the reaction of the person that you're with or that you're out there off-grid with, or your children, or how they're going to, respond to this or that or the other thing. I don't know. You want to see a fool? I'll show you a fool. I'll tell you a person who is thinks they have it all together and can handle anything and doesn't need any help. And this is the realization, because I used to think I was that person. Who could make every decision on their own and be competent, who could single-handedly overcome any obstacle, and it's just not true. And that's what I realized for myself, is I'm not the most amazing person who can just make everything go right and everything, the physical universe yields to my will. Because there was a time when I actually thought that. I really thought that was who I was, and that I was special. Making it through the yelling at each other phase helped me to realize that I'm not special. I don't have any hidden talents that make me more, capable or anything else like that. And I can't predict the future. I can't tell you what's going to happen as a result of you making a decision to move off grid. I can't do that. All I can do is tell you the mistakes that I've made, and hopefully you can look at that and go, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm gonna listen to what he has to say and kind of try and steer around that kind of stuff. And if any of you figure out how to make it from step 2, the manic activity, to step 4 without a step 3, please let me know, because I would love to tell people about that. But I will tell you, I don't think whatever solution you can come up with for that is going to be very healthy. I think you need to actually make it through that. So now you've come to the realization, you've confronted reality, and reality has 2 definitions, okay? One is, what is? This is the actual scene. This is what's going on. That's reality. But reality is also the agreements that you make with the people close to you. Okay. This is coffee. Why is it coffee? It's coffee because somebody, called it originally coffee. They named it coffee. They said, to another person, hey, check it out. This is coffee. Okay. And, in doing so, they got agreement, and that agreement became, that this, is coffee. They started telling people, they got more agreement. And now you couldn't tell somebody that this isn't coffee. You couldn't convince somebody that this is soda pop or whatever. The truth of our interpersonal relationships is that reality is based on the agreements that we make, with each other. So, I don't know, have any of you guys ever seen the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy? And if you haven't, I really recommend watching it. It's a great explanation on, or demonstration of reality. A guy in a helicopter is flying over, or a plane or something, and he drops a Coke bottle out the window. That Coke bottle falls to the ground and hits a tribal gentleman in the head. Oh my gosh, it was from the gods. Up in the sky, they dropped something down, hit me in the head, boom, Well, he takes that back to his village, and everybody starts looking at all the different uses that they could have for this Coke bottle, and they're kneading bread, and they're doing all of this stuff. But then no rains come, and there's all of the, people get sick, and there's all of these different issues. Well, they think, oh my gosh, the reality or the agreement in the group becomes the gods must be upset with us. And that's why they sent this curse to us, because now everybody's fighting over being able to use the bottle, or what the use of the bottle is. Or, now you've got these different sections that are grouping off and saying, this is reality. No, this is reality. No, this is what we agree. And it really separated everybody. So the agreement in the group became, we need to take this to the edge of the earth and toss it off so that we can tell the gods that we've gotten what they're saying and everything else. Well, so this whole adventure that this guy goes on to return the bottle to the gods, he tried to throw it up in the air, it just came back and hit him in the head again, was all because somebody threw a bottle out of a passing airplane. And because people didn't know what it was, they came to an agreement. That became reality, and they had to come up with a solution. So that leads us to step 5. And step 5 is solutions. Okay? This is where a lot of people break down too. And if you find yourself starting back over at step 1 after you've had all these realizations, I want you to just realize that the one and only reason that you're back at step 1 is because you didn't do step 5. And step 5 is solutions. Solutions to stop the things that led to those upsets with reality, upsets between the people that you're with. You have to come up with a way in your situation to mitigate that thing, because there will be other times where, a few years in, where you'll be like, okay, now I've got some new things that I'm frustrated about. I've got some things that I want to talk about, and it's going to lead to fights and arguments and everything else. And again, I can't say that this is, true for every relationship that there will ever be. This was true for me, and it was true for well over 90% of the people that I talked to about this situation. And it's not only just an off-grid thing. This is probably one of the big reasons why 50% of the marriages that are entered into end in divorce. So solution. You need to think to yourself, what is it that I can do to avoid this becoming a problem? Not to avoid the situation, because to avoid a situation is to guarantee its constant existence, okay? You must confront situations and solve them. But what does that solution look like? For me, it was when I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to get really frustrated with my family or with Carrie or with the kids or whatever, I have to leave for a minute, I have to leave first. That's the very first step. I have to separate myself from the situation so that I can take the frustration of the situation out of the equation while I'm trying to solve the problem, okay? Because those two things don't mix. One taints the other and vice versa. Not being able to then come up with a solution will make you more frustrated, and that frustration just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It's kind of sucky. So as far as that solution goes, I have to first step away and clear my head. How do I clear my head? There's a couple of different ways. One, I can jump on the motorcycle with my buddy David and go for a dirt bike ride. We did that a couple years ago when I was really, 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 really upset, and there's just tons of trails and everything around here. It was awesome. And I mean, when I say upset, I was, that trailer that we came out here, in at that time, I set it up for me to live in. I was gonna have my own house on the property, just down the way. But, come to find out, it was me that was creating that whole situation that caused that. And, Lover, if you're watching, I know that that's the case, you know. So yeah. So I went off and I did that. I've had some frustrating things happening recently that are less frustrating and more just stressful. They're, you know, we're looking at having another baby, and that just triggers. If it doesn't trigger the need to solve all the problems in your life, then there's something, you know, mildly incorrect with something having to do with you. You kids are stressful and they motivate you and they turn on your drive switch. So after this video, my friend and I are going to take the dirt bikes and we're going to ride over to the shooting range, and I'm gonna pop off about between 500 and 1,000 rounds, and that's gonna make me feel so much better. There's this episode of The Simpsons where the guy, I think it's Ralph Wiggum, and they're over at his house, and the car's just got a ton of the car out in the front yard has just got a ton of holes in it. And Bart asks, you know, Ralph, what's that? And Ralph says, "Oh, that's my dad's shooting car. 2 more payments and it'll be all ours," you know. There's a shooting car out at the range, and I'm gonna go blast some holes in it. So that's gonna help me to just kind of like unload all of that stuff that will trigger that yelling at each other phase. Then that solution is the clarity aspect of it. Now that I've had clarity and I've been able to actually identify what the frustrating things are and correctly pick an accurate target as far as what the real reason for that situation occurring is, I'm going to then very clearly and very calmly address it. Okay? If I enter into that step to address that situation and come up with that solution, I have to know that I could get frustrated again. And when I get frustrated again, I just need to do that step again. Now, here's where reality changes for you, okay? By confronting all of these things and making all of these things a priority for you to solve, you will find that you and your significant other, you and your friends, and you and your kids will make new agreements. And what have we said about agreements? They make up reality in interpersonal relationships. Things are the way they are because... there you are! Sorry, I was reconnecting there for a second. So now you've made a new reality with your people that you're with, the significant others, the children, and your friends, whomever. You've made it through all of these different phases. Now you've formulated new agreements, which means that you have gained a new reality with each other. Well, you've made these agreements. The way to maintain that for the longest period of time possible is stick to your agreements. Do the things you said you were going to do. Solve the problem the way that you said you were going to solve it. Don't continuously do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. It's just insanity. That is insanity. So, I don't know. I hope that these little, things will point out less of what to do about the situation and more to do with these are situations, and they are situations for everybody. I don't care who you are. If you live in a place where you talk to people all the time, moving to a place where the only person you're going to talk to is your wife, you are going to have conflicts. And if you don't expect that, you're going to be 100 times more upset when it happens. Okay? So, that being said, I want to continue talking about all of these different things. I want to, start a conversation. If there's things that you disagreed with me on, that's the best conversation because maybe we'll come to a better solution. But also be prepared to defend your position, because I am prepared to defend mine. And I've had this thing up behind me right here because it's very bright and shiny and beautiful and sunny today. I mean, this is probably the most beautiful day we've had all year. So I'm going to make this promise to you. I am going to go out there and I'm going to do something today. It's too beautiful to be inside. It's too perfect of a day to not get out and be productive. Because production will put a smile on your face. And if you can find something to do and you go out and do it and you're not smiling at the end of the day, PM me, because we should have a talk. So anyhow, I don't have another saying that I was going to go over at the end of my show like I normally do, but I did want to just stop and ask if there was any questions that anybody had. This video, I'm not sure what happened, but apparently there were no notifications that were sent out in the group that it was going on. I've actually never done one of these videos and only had two viewers or 3 viewers at a time. So I'm sure there was some kind of a tech issue, but we'll figure that out after the video. Does anybody have any questions or disagreements, comments, anything that they want to say? And, you can also do that after the video in the comment section. I'm totally fine with that. And I'll do everything I can to try and get back to you on it. And that'll be in about an hour or so. Well, I don't see any questions, or any of the likes or any reactions. I'm wondering if there's something wrong with the comments button on the on this video. Nope, there's a comment. Right on. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off then, and if there are any questions, comments, concerns, disagreements, anything like that, please post them in the comments section, and we'll chat about it all week. All right? Oh, wait. What is in that custom coffee blend? It is half espresso and half a particular brand of Kona coffee. And I'm glad that you asked that. There's actually, I'm not even going to say anything about it, but if you're really, really clever, you may even be able to find that blend. I'm going to sign off now. I thank everybody for watching. If you have any questions, like I said, I'd be happy to answer them. And we will talk next week. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about yet. I'd love to hear any suggestions that you guys have about subjects you'd like to hear my viewpoint on. And as always, production put a smile on your face. Get outside and do something. I'll talk to you guys later.